Awesome. All right. Thank you for joining us, everyone, and thank you for waiting. This is our first time doing a panel. We're very excited about this. As you can see, there are quite a few of us. Yeah, so it took a little bit of finagling to get this set up. Hopefully, it's working properly. If you are having issues with the audio, either some of the guests are too quiet, or or myself, or something like that, please let me know, and I will try to adjust the audio. Okay, so today we have a special edition of Mission Briefing. In that, this is, as I mentioned, our first panel. And the cool thing is we're going to look at what it took to build Explorer in Apollo Studio. If you're not familiar with Explorer, it's a really awesome tool for allowing you to kind of explore your graph, generate queries for it, and there's a lot of other features it has and things coming. But I'll save that because today I'm just the moderator. So what we're going to do is we'll do some quick introductions with everyone here. Then we'll watch a quick intro video about Explorer, just in case you're not familiar, and then we'll get into the discussion. So I'm just going to kind of go in order with how everyone is showing up on the screen. And so, Chang, why don't you take it off first and go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Chung. I'm on the Artemis team. I helped build Explorer. I've worked on a few side projects. I haven't asked if it's okay to throw shoutouts out, so I'm going to skip that and go on to the next person.
Oh, you can. You could do whatever you want. This is your time.
Oh, geez. All right. Check out NPM charts.
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
There you go. Nice. Awesome. How about you, Jeff? You want to take it next?
Yeah, so I'm the newest member of the Artemis team. I'm a core developer, primarily front end. I don't have any plugs, so I won't be plugging anything.
All right. Yeah. I mean, it can be a plug-free zone as well. Totally works. Next up, we've got Jason.
Hi, I'm also a core developer on the Artemis team, and I'll go plugless too.
Okay. All right. And then, yeah, let's see who we got left. Joel, I guess. Yeah.
Hey,
You want to take it away?
yeah, I'm Joel. I'm the product design lead for the Explorer project, working with these folks to build Explorer on the Artemis team, and yeah, that's about it.
Cool. So I've heard that phrase a couple times. Artemis. What is Artemis? Anyone want to take?
Danielle's team?
Okay, yeah. So it's a team within Apollo, I guess, managed by Danielle Mann, who has been tweeting quite a bit about Explorer. And yeah, so okay, because I just heard Artemis, and I just want to clear up for anyone at home, like who might think that that might be something else.
Yeah, Artemis is just our internal name. We focus on lots of different features, and Explorer's been the one that we've been focused on for the last several months.
Awesome, very cool. All right, so I think the next thing is we should flip over to this intro. We'll check that out for everyone who might not be familiar, and then we'll come back and kind of discuss this. So our mics will be live, so if you want to add some commentary or something like that, please feel free to do so. And so let's see, let me get ready for this. Okay, so we're in the right place. All right, we're going to switch over.
The Apollo Explorer was designed by developers for developers, with a simple goal of making GraphQL query writing as fast and intuitive as possible. For the sake of our demo here, I've pointed the Explorer to the GitHub GraphQL API. Let's take a look at what we can do. The heart of the Explorer is its operation editor, which is built on Monaco and will feel familiar to anyone who has used VS Code before. The editor has full intelligence of your schema, meaning we can hover over fields to peek their definitions, command hover them to see full definitions, and even command click them to jump to their definitions in the docs. The editor also has autocomplete for field selections on control space, and even autocomplete for argument selections on fields. Not only does it show you which arguments are available for a given field, but once you've selected one, it fills in the variable value for that argument for you automatically. The Explorer is doing the work here of naming that variable, filling in the variable declaration at the top of your operation, and filling in the JSON scaffolding of that variable for you, so that we can super easily fill in a value here and just run this query. The Explorer also helps you manage multiple queries in your editor at once. It keeps your active query in focus, dimming the others, so you always know which context you're working with. And all of its shortcuts, like Command Enter to run, are also aware of this context. There's no more need to clarify which query you want to run in your editor because the editor just knows when you click the Run button. And each operation also comes with its own context menu that allows you to take actions on it independent of the other operations in your editor. We can purposefully mess up one of these operations and introduce some syntax errors, but we will still be able to operate on the valid operation independent of that. We can format it, we can copy a link to it to share with other people on our team, and we can even still run this query. Next, let's take a look at the Explorer's documentation panel, which also doubles as a query builder. The documentation panel is designed to let you walk into your schema. You can start at the root types of query, mutation, and subscriptions if you have them, and as you progress further into your schema, the docs keep track of the path you've walked with breadcrumbs for you. This helps you jump backwards quickly if you'd like, but it also provides the documentation panel with crucial context. At any point, you can click a plus button to a field that you're looking at and add it to your query. And if you do that, the docs know exactly where in your query to put that field because it's on the path that you walked. You can use these plus buttons to add arguments to your query just as easily as you add fields. And the docs are also aware of the context of our active query, so if we switch that context in the editor, you'll notice that the state in the docs pane reflects that and different things are checked. And if we add fields to our query now from the docs pane, they'll be added to the query that we've just put the focus on. Next, let's take a look at search. The Explorer comes with a Spotlight style search that has 2 steps. The first step is focused on helping you identify which field it is you're looking for. It's pretty common for fields of the same name to exist across many different types in the schema, so you can use the dot modifier here to fuzzy search on both type names and field names to filter that list down. Once you've selected which field you're looking for and which type you're looking for it on, you're taken to the second step of search. This is all about selecting which breadcrumb path context you want to open that field up on in the docs. This is a crucial step, and it takes the process of looking for a field and identifying a quick path to that field in your query from something that can sometimes take minutes if you don't quite know what it is, to something that can take less than 5 seconds. Far faster than if we were to try and type this out in our editor by memory. To finish up our Explorer tour, let's take a look at some of the last few features for now. The Explorer has an operation time machine that allows you to go backwards and recover previous states in your editor. It tracks both the state of our operations and the state of our variables, meaning that we can experiment freely with adding fields to our query or changing the parameters of our variables and not have to feel like we're losing our work in doing that. And the Explorer also comes in both light mode and dark mode because these days, no developer tool seems to be complete without both. We are extremely excited to be sharing this tool with you today and have a lot more coming up for the Explorer even later this year. Please give things here a try and let us know what you think, and as always, happy querying.
Over. Boom, we're back. Cool, yeah, so a quick little intro video. We did get a question from Salazar, which is, like, how do you access Explorer? And so just to kind of, I guess, explain that, it's part of Apollo Studio. And so when you register a graph in Apollo Studio, one of the awesome things that you get to do with it is take advantage of Explorer. Currently, that's how it works. Does anyone else want to maybe take that and unpack that a bit more as far as, you know, usage and yeah, any thoughts on that?
I don't know what degree of roadmap we're allowed to expose, but currently the way to get at Explorer is registering an account on Studio, And as soon as you create a graph, Explorer is one of the default tabs. So from there, you'll be able to query your endpoint or set an endpoint and then query against it.
Once you've published your schema as well.
Right. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that.
Yeah, we're exploring other ways to use Explorer, and for the future. But for right now, the main idea is that for folks using Apollo Studio, you now have a way that you can query and run operations on your graph from right within Studio. So you do have to have a registered graph.
Got it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And yeah. So this is not about diving into a roadmap or anything like that. We're just going to focus on what's on the here and now. And yeah, so I have Explorer open here. So let me switch back really quick just so everyone can.
I think Chung might have to take this one because I don't quite remember.
I guess I am probably relatively longer in the team. My memory recollection of this is that this was kind of a bug that our manager Danielle had for a very, very long time. It's one of the things that she's prototyped as just like her on her own time and built some really amazing prototypes that we looked at. I was like, damn, can we? Sorry, apologies. Darn.
That's okay. You can say damn. It's fine.
Darn, I really wish we could build this. And I think it was around February that we actually got to start with some prototyping and building on this. And I think that's around the time when Joel came in. And then 4 months later, here we are.
Nice, awesome. That's actually a very short time frame. So Joel, maybe if I could dive into that a little bit. So you came in, and brought some kind of design life, I guess, to this. And so what was your like initial reactions when you saw Explorer and how did we get from where it was to what we see here? Because what we see is beautiful. It's a very easy to use IDE for querying for GraphQL with a lot of neat features. And I'm just like, curious to hear kind of how that, what was the process like from taking that prototype and getting it to this refined product?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. That's a great question. And it's been an interesting journey because I started with Apollo just about 4 months ago myself. And there had been a ton of work and thought that had gone into this project where I even started. Adam Torres was the previous designer that had been working here, and he had done a lot of initial design mocks and explorations for this, working directly with Danielle on how that could come to pass. And so I jumped into a project that had a lot of thought into it, and the team had already built out a prototype. And I think a lot of this came from some initial research that was done several months back, just trying to figure out what teams who are using Apollo could really benefit from. And a lot of the thinking behind this is Studio right now has a lot of wonderful tools for graph maintainers and managers and people that are publishing the graph. And we wanted to offer a way that consumers of the graph, folks that are just jumping in and working with the graph in an organization, could have some tooling that they can begin to run operations and figure out, like, how do I use this graph and where can I get data directly from it? So when I jumped in, I sort of had to catch up to speed on some of that context, and working with the team. It was just, many weeks of like starting and sequencing, like what are the things that we need to build on and add to that are there now. Like I said, there was quite a lot of surface area built in the product when I jumped in. I think we already had the operation panel and the ability to run operations and see your history and use work with your variables and headers and all that sort of stuff. So when I jumped in, it was partly a process of just refinement of one of the things that we had to consider was adding some additional panels and some of the experience. So that required a little bit of layout changes. We took some time and just refined the layout a little bit. We ended up looking at dark mode and light mode. So right now you can switch between the dark theme and the light theme. And that came out of a question of how do we fit this into the rest of Studio and help it feel like a cohesive experience? And that was actually a bigger question that touched on a lot of things, but ultimately one of the simple things that came out of that was this ability to switch from dark mode and light mode so that when you're using it, you can, use it like the rest of Studio looks, or you can switch to dark mode, which is what most developers or many developers like to work in their editors already. Chung and the team had done a lot of work to get that to play out, but
that so just to kind of, I guess, piggyback off of that, Chung, do you want to talk a little bit more about like how so I guess actually I should say, like, what part of the UI did you focus on? Clearly it sounds like the themable switching was part of it, but were there any challenges you really faced there? Like, what was that like? Because you're kind of fighting against the system, like the rest of the design of the app. So if we just jump around, and take a look at the different fields, it's pretty different. There's no dark mode anywhere else in the platform. So what was that like?
Oh man, I wonder if this might be a better question for Joel. So on the technical implementation side, this is super easy to set a thing to be different colors depending on a toggle, depending on a flag. But I imagine, I guess, finding out the system for what colors map to what might have been, I guess, like sometimes you can kind of imagine design just popping out like a snap. But I think for designing a color theme toggle, it might be more involving and more time consuming. I don't know, Joel, when you look back on the dark light toggle, is it more, what do you feel? What's your memory of that?
Well, I mean, I remember that, we started really with a solid, like flat black style, like the original designs had used this black style. And as we've been going through product architecture process that our other product designer, Zeri, had been leading through this process, we decided to bring Studio into the app in a way that included some elements in the UI that sort of wrapped it to help it feel more like Studio. And at that point, it became apparent that the black styling it stood out a little bit in an unhelpful way. And so that's when I started to explore, like, what are some ways we can bring some color and tint into Studio, which led to sort of the indigo navy styling that you see now. And so that ended up like turning into this exercise where we mapped out the different color patterns for the different components, like the background shades, the shades for UI controls and icons, and then typography, and then map that onto the reverse for light mode. And yeah, I mean, it took a little bit of time to sort of wrangle in and find a constraint, like an exact constraint for how many colors that we could do this within, and trying to keep it to our existing Space Kit library as much as possible parameters, which was like 7 colors. And then I worked with Chung and Jeffrey and Jason on like figuring out how is this going to implement it. I mean, Chung had done a lot of thinking around like what are the different ways we could actually implement this in our custom use of Tailwinds. So I mean, from my perspective, it really was a very collaborative effort where sort of I had to give some time and space for Chung to work through with the team, like what was the best approach to implementing a themable toggle system in the utility classes, and then figuring out like what color values we needed to actually use and then going back and figuring, and like once we had sort of solved those two stories, taking that to the final implementation. So I don't know, Chung, if you have anything more to add on like how that played out in that process, or where some of the maybe the more challenging parts were.
I think I'm really glad we got to keep dark mode because one of the possibilities was that we had to convert everything to light mode, and I think all the developers here kind of, well, at least in this panel, feel
Yeah.
very strongly in favor of like we love the dark mode. We would hate to see it go, and it's what we use. And we had to put in more work to make that happen. And we're definitely not the kind of company where we go like, let's add in toggling because it's fun and it's hip, and time is inconsequential. And I think while the dark light toggle is probably one of the more prominent things that you can see that's like snappy, a lot of the things that make Explorer really pleasure to use are some of the subtle things that make your development experience easier.
Yeah.
I think during the demo, one of the things was, I don't know if you can bring up, do you have any pre-filled queries on hand?
I don't, but I could just start adding things. You want me to just
Yeah,
create some queries?
that,
Like,
that
yeah,
would be fantastic if you can
yeah,
have something with like maybe two queries.
yeah.
So the story that I wanted to tell is kind of the thing that kind of, when I was watching that demo video, as Danielle was kind of switching between one query to another, you would see like the query that is being edited really like just
Debug something, and I added it, but then it felt cool, so it stayed.
That's amazing
I think
because
I put it up in a PR and just said, "Hey, is this fine?
that
Can we leave it?"
I love that that's how that came to be. Like it's one of my favorite features. You're right, and it's like when you get into that subtleness of it, it makes it very clear where your focus is, so that and again, sometimes like for me, exploring larger graphs is extremely cumbersome. Like when I'm in graphical and I'm trying to build out a query, and then I realize like, oh yeah, but I also need like something else, and now you have two queries and two mutations, and like it starts to get out of hand and you don't remember where you're working. You're like checking check boxes to try and like dig down. And again, I am not trying to poo poo on graphical. Like I use it all the time and I love it. But when you do, yeah, when you do get to exactly, when you get to bigger graphs, it gets hard to manage. And it's not just large graphs, right? Like exploring a graph through like a top-down kind of like pick your path. It like reminds me of those books where you can like pick a page to go through and like you don't know how it's going to end until until like you
Choose
get.
your own adventure books.
Yes, choose your own adventure. It's like choose your own adventure queries. And I think the thing that I love most about Studio too, like going back to that search and the ease of use, it makes it feel a lot less like that. It makes it feel like instead I'm just digging in, searching directly for what I want, and staying focused on task. I think yeah, to piggyback off of that, so actually going off of like developer experience, ease of use, and things like that, which something I'm sure was complicated, or maybe not, and you'll blow my mind, but like, can we talk about search? So I'm gonna switch back over. Okay. Well, I'm gonna
That's
switch
interesting.
back. That is sorry. So again, this is my first time doing this, and I think I know why it's doing it. Oh, that's kind of frustrating. I do apologize. So what I was saying is, you have this really nice search. It looks very Mac or Alfred-esque in it. The big results are there. It gives you the description and the type, what type it's on, and the path to it, which I thought was really useful. I'm sorry that y'all have lost the end of two other combos. I feel that I have failed you all. I beg of your forgiveness. But yeah, this is really impressive stuff. So can we talk a little bit about building this? Like this had to be something that was a real challenge. Uh,
Yeah, Chung should really talk about that. I'll just give a note on the design. I mean, it was pretty straightforward. Definitely inspired by both my experience with Alfred and Spotlight Search, and the idea that we should be able to provide an experience where you can quickly and easily get as much details as you can, and then go directly to where you want. But yeah, the real interesting part of the story is, I think, constructing this sort of experience.
Yeah, and I'm also interested to hear. So Chung, maybe yeah, you want to take it from there, but like about search performance and like what is happening under the hood? How is it figuring out? Taking that we've got like fuzzy search capabilities. So I'm just like curious how all of this, how does that work?
All right, sure. I'll see what I can do. So search is one of the things that we one of the nice things about the Explorer's user experience is that we have kind of a mix of two different kinds of experiences. There are ones like search where it's kind of like we knew from the outset this is something that was important and it's something that we wanted to build. And then there are ones with like the focusing and the dimming that kind of just sprung out as we developed. So this is
Yeah.
one that was from the outset we knew we needed to have really good search. That's one of the things that will help us we love Playground. We before this we used Playground or Graphical all the time, but like not having as easy of a like search kind of felt like it was a bit to the side. It was not as in focus, and that was one of the things that we wanted to help improve. And So this is kind of a kind of long project. Like for since the start of the project until the end, there were kind of two separate forks of development going on where it was Jason mostly focusing on the editor side of things, and then I was mostly focusing on the search side of things, and we kind of intermingled, helping with some features on their side. Uh, so that is a long way to say there are a lot of things I don't actually remember um, from when we started. We knew
Yeah.
that we wanted search. We wanted something that was like Spotlight because that was familiar to developers,
Yeah.
and we knew it needed to be fast. We knew it needed to be fast, and there are things that we did that for example, virtualization. Oh, so I'll just explain, I guess, what we're doing, what we're seeing right now. Because Studio has your register schemas, we have your SDL. We also have the introspection query format of your schema. So we were pulling that, and then from that we have your the full data shape of your schema, and then from that we can construct a list of what are all the types that you have, and from all those types, what are all the fields on each type. And then it's a matter of deciding like when we have some search inputs, how do we decide what the orderings for the search results should be? And this is I guess it's a very iterative process, and some things, for example, the ordering of things, what should be included, what shouldn't be included.
Right.
Each one of those is kind of a long discussion where we chat and then we argue and then we debate and then we try things out, and then if things don't feel right, we change it up. So it's kind of like it's a very iterative, testy process.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So, did you maybe was there any like performance issues that you hit along the way? I know search can notoriously lead up to issues with performance, especially like the larger the data set gets. So I'm just curious if there's any like insights into the implementation there. Did you hit any problems, or was it just like, hey, it just works and it's nice?
So search has two phases of search, and the first phase of search does not have that many performance problems because it's limited by how many types and how many fields you have. And the more letters that you type, the more that we were able to filter out.
Right.
The second phase of search, where we're trying to find all the paths, that is one where we did hit a lot of performance issues with. And then I think I'll let Jason talk about that. if you're up for it.
Yeah, we did have some performance issues with the second phase. Basically, like once you have a field, finding all the paths from the root types and any defined fragment types. I think at one point we found something like in the many, what was it, billions of paths in the GitHub schema to get to like a pull request.
Wow.
But yeah, I think we ended up just limiting paths to a certain length. I think like 10 steps.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, if you're building a query that has that much nesting anyways, things kind of get a little out of hand. So that seemed like a decent way to get around it.
It might be worth mentioning the line of thought behind why we wanted to have search phase 2. I wonder if Jason might to clarify. I think Jason built out most of search phase 2 actually.
Oh, very cool.
I guess the idea there is at any point we want something to be actionable in the docs panel. So we don't want to take you to just a type where you can't really do anything, because the experience is somewhat about like exploring your graph, but really you're there to build something. The idea being, if we just have a type, we don't really know what you're trying to build, but if you have a full path, how you got there, then we can start adding things straight away in the query builder. So that's why we have that second phase, is so we always have context to what you're trying to accomplish.
Because once you're there, you can hit that plus button on the field, and then now it's in your query.
Yeah, so I'm going to try switching again, and this time audio should work, so chat, let me know if it does not.
All right.
Okay, so chat, let me know if you're getting that audio.
Testing. Do we need to talk?
Yes, can hear you. Cool. I did it.
Sweet.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So what I wanted to say is, when we talk about the second phase of search, so what you're seeing right now is I've searched for name, and we've got this product.name hit. So when I hit enter, to select, there's actually a couple different paths to get from the root down to name. And so this is that second phase of the search that they're referencing, which can get really costly trying to go too many levels deep into that. But again, like that's like a concern. Like nesting that deep of resolvers can just be pretty ugly anyway. Like a lot of tools add limits and checks to make sure like your queries only have a certain level of depth. Yeah, cool. So I can't believe I got this working. Very sorry that it did not work before, but I'm glad it works now because we can like kind of talk over the stuff as we do it. Okay, so that's cool. That was like one of my biggest questions was about search. But the next thing I kind of want to dive into is the operations panel. Are they panels? Is that a good terminology to call it?
I think that's fine. We call them. We refer to them as panels. Yeah. Okay,
cool. Yeah, so the query builder, so I noticed in the demo video that Danielle said it's built on top of Monaco, I believe, and would feel familiar to VS Code developers. Does anybody want to maybe touch on that a bit more? And like, what does that mean? What does it all mean, Basil?
Yeah, I can talk a bit about that. So VS Code is a pretty popular text editor amongst JavaScript developers and all sorts, but they really focus on TypeScript. But it's actually built entirely in TypeScript, and that project is called Monaco, which means you can actually run that same exact editor in a browser. And so that's what we're doing here. So like the operations pane that has for on is actually an editor instance, and then when you open up the variables, that's another editor. So we actually have like multiple instances of basically VS Code running in there. It's not VS Code because it has a bunch of stuff running on top of it, but of the Monaco. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to elaborate more on that, but
that goes great.
How much secret sauce can we give away, Jason?
I have no idea. Where's Danielle?
We want to know. We want to know how it's built. Danielle,
if you can like figure it out from web inspecting it, it's probably fair game to talk about, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. View source. Yeah, very cool. Okay, so another interesting part to me is the relationship between operations and documentation. So like as I'm making changes, and like I just added username. Let me switch back over. So what I've done is I add username, or in this case, I'll remove it. So we don't have it, and then we can see that it becomes unchecked in the documentation. If I add username back, it's now checked in the documentation, but then I can also reverse, like uncheck it from the documentation. So this is actually a pretty difficult, I guess, state management situation that you're in, where you kind of want to sync up both of those panels. Does anybody want to talk a little bit about that? They're like, no,
Uh,
don't remind
sure.
me.
I'll take that. It was, oh boy, that feels like so long ago. Um, yeah, I
Digging up
guess
old bones.
month-old phones. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we pretty much just like read each of your operations, like we um, parse it like fault tolerantly to go and try to find out what kind of the context is that you're in. So like where what you're highlighted in, where that is in the operation, and then kind of
Yeah.
match that with the docs um, to find out like yeah what things in your current selection exist, and give you a way to like add the rest of them. So like if you're completely out of sync, like it'll add the whole path up to where you are in the docs. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Just like walking the path in to try to find like yeah, figure out that match.
Yeah. There must be like some really so far the entire thing has been like walking trees, which is not surprising because it's GraphQL, right? But it's like a lot of walking trees. Like how many like reduce or like recursive functions are like in the code base? Like is it basically just like a bunch of recursion until you get to what you need? Like does that ever get complex? Like what's it like working with this code under the hood, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Like you have like unavoidable complexity, right? Like some things are just hard, like walking trees or like parsing ASTs. These are things that are just intrinsically relatively difficult to do. And then you have like, I don't know, like complexity for the sake of it, right? But like this seems like you would have a decent amount of complex code simply because of the problem that you're trying to solve. Is this accurate?
A lot of the editor code especially is pretty hairy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime you're doing like fault tolerant parsing, things get pretty
Yeah.
odd.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
for sure.
I don't know how deep in the weeds you want to get, but Jason actually, so the way we
Deep.
were parsing deep, the online parser, so the fault tolerant parser, the way we were writing this originally, we'd get partial states of tokens. So you'd get like for a field, for example, you'd get the fact that there's a field with no name, and then you'd get another call like this of this function that's creating a state that has the name as well. So one of the things that Jason did was to write that so that we never actually call our callback until we have a full state, like till that token completes. So you get a field and
Yeah.
you have all the information about that field that you can get. Whereas before we were tracking like the last thing that we got was a field with no name. So this field with a name is probably that same field, but with the name,
Oof.
which was
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
really hairy. So that was a huge improvement when Jason added that. I don't know if he wants to get into more of the weeds of that, but it was
Well,
that made so
yeah,
much of the stuff easier.
a lot of the complexity there comes from basically all of the features except for a couple special cases will work when you have invalid parts of an operation, which is why a lot of it is quite difficult and complicated. I think the one thing we have left to tackle is linting. That's the only one that doesn't
Yeah.
quite work perfectly when you have some invalid syntax somewhere. But for everything
Okay.
else, things should work. If they don't, tell us.
Please, we beg of you, tell us. So speaking of linting, the linting experience, and like error experience is very nice. Like I like it. It can I mean, I guess this is just introspection and linting. Like you can do this with the Apollo VS Code extension. Like, is this using the same language server, or is this like its own sort of linting that's happening because you already are doing so much within Explorer? It just made more sense to kind of handle that yourself.
So this, as it stands right now, is essentially the same thing as you would find in like our VS Code extension. But I think we do plan to overhaul it so we can get, I guess when you're in our VS Code extension, it's not like the entire focus of what's going on. So it's not a huge deal if like linting doesn't work perfectly, if your operation's invalid or whatever, you don't touching it much. But when you're in the Explorer, things are like you're there to build an operation. Things are going to be in progress. So it kind of, you have a higher bar for what's like acceptable experience there.
Yeah.
So that is one that will get better.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure so far to work with. It's been really nice. Yeah. So let's see. I guess one other thing that really had me curious, again, going from the demo video, and I don't have any queries here because I haven't ran any. So let me just start running some of these, so that we can start to get some history. And then let me just add like name here, so it's a new query, and I'll start running that. Let me switch over to that real quick. So I'm switched over. I'm on the history section of that, I guess, information panel. And can you tell me a little bit about like tracking the state? So like this is really interesting to me. Like it's got the entire state of my operations. I'm noticing like even my other query. So it's almost like a snapshot in time. Does anybody want to talk about like the implementation there?
Definitely you, Jason, right?
I thought you
He's
built
like,
this.
no.
Oh shit. Sure.
You're good.
You did,
Don't
Sean.
worry about that. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So the operations. One of the limitations that we have with Explorer is we don't have tabs. We do handle multiple operations fairly well, but being able to look at what you've done in the past is it's fairly important both for as you're working on things iteratively and also for debugging as well to see like what errors did you get before and what were the things that were broken. So it's kind of necessary to have, and also is also kind of a not a hack. It's a corner cut towards not having. We didn't start out with having as good an experience with editing multiple operations as we do now.
Yeah.
So it would also help carry some of that load as well.
Very
And I wonder
cool.
if Joel might have more to add about the operation history, because
Yeah.
I remember you having discussed it with UX stuff before.
Yeah, you explained it pretty well. There's certainly some other questions around how we're going to continue to tell the story in the future. As you point out right now, when you navigate through your history, it swaps out the state of everything in the entire operation editor. And I think there may be some more friendly ways to handle that experience that we're going to continue working on. It's really the question of how do we want to load those states, and so those are things we're going to be continuing to work on. I mean, the idea that we don't have tabs was an intentional decision to sort of focus your experience in the current operation editor. And we'll be continuing to build features into the experience that help to facilitate
Right.
that experience working well.
That's awesome. So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's all. Yeah.
Nice. I guess so we've covered like some of the more key features like search and stuff. Is there anything that I have not covered yet that you would like to talk about? Like, is there anything
Oh
that
yes.
that you worked on here that you were just like, ooh, let's dive into this because I'm just kind of winging it, throwing questions at you. But I would love to hear from y'all. Like, what did you love about this? Hate about this? Like, like let's hear it. Let's hear all the dirty laundry.
Well, no, not dirty laundry, but the meatball button. We should definitely talk about that meatball button.
Oh, the
Um,
meatball button? Is that this down here in the bottom right corner?
It's
Three
it's
dots
the
beside each operation.
Oh, the meatball button. Okay, hang on. Let me switch so that everyone knows what I'm talking about here. And I'm going to zoom in on this. We're talking about this little button right here. This is the meatball button.
yeah.
Okay.
So that is one of the things that we recently added to make it easier to work with multiple operations in the same
Ooh,
document.
I like that.
And it kind of came out of it kind of came out of a Slack thread where I think Joel in a mock where he wanted to have that meatball button there, and then it terrified me because like, how are we going to do that? Are we going to have to overlay a UI on top of Monaco and then keep track of scroll positions
Oh,
and then like simulate overflow and
yikes.
keep track of what's overflowed and what isn't? And then I think that kind of triggered Jeffrey to look into like, can you actually do this within Monaco? And pretty quickly he put together a proof of concept to like, yeah, in fact, you don't need to do all that weird thing. You can do this in Monaco, which I have to say it's not. It was okay. Yeah, I'll let Jeffrey talk about this one actually.
Yeah, that was basically, he asked if it was possible. I had no idea. And then I just started reading through the Monaco docs trying to find out if this is possible. Um, and I kind of found it as an example in a completely unrelated issue, talking about view zones, which is basically the ability in Monaco to put between lines in the editor, you can put a view. So you could do like a preview of that text, but it doesn't actually go, like, it doesn't make a line in the editor. So actually doing
Okay.
that with a zero height and then positioning to the right so that it's on the same line as the operation. But I sort of found that, and we didn't actually mean to do it. This is another one of those. I just had to figure out if it was possible. Turned out it was, and then everyone was super excited. So I finished that. There's actually two more things coming to that soon where you can run operations from that menu. So you can click on
Oh,
that to
that
run
makes
an
sense.
operation and
Yeah.
copy the operation and its fragments. So right now you can copy a link to that in
Ooh.
Studio, but you'll be able to, so if you're
Yeah.
building a query to run in your actual app, they'll be able to build it in Explorer and then click copy the operation, and now grab the operation plus any fragments it's using into the string with like trimmed all the white space, and you can paste that into your editor.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, and so I didn't even realize this. So I can copy the link to the operation. I'm going to drop it into a new tab, open it up, and boom, look at that. So it just drops me right into the same, I guess, like variant of my graph. The query is all loaded up. That was really cool. I didn't even know about that. And it's cool because it's a nice little meatball menu that you can, yeah, add a couple more options to. It's like out of the way, but very related and opens up a lot more functionality. So that's pretty awesome.
One of
Heck,
my favorite
heck
things about
yeah.
that copy link as well is that it'll copy the variables that are used, but not the ones that aren't used. So you have multiple operations in the
Oh,
editor.
yeah.
It'll only copy the variables for the one that you're actually copying, rather than everything in the variables JSON.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's another thing I noticed too is that like if you add a property that requires variables, it will like auto populate those into the variable section for you as well, which I was like, oh, that's pleasant because there's nothing worse than like when you're in graphical trying to like create the JSON object while it's trying to like auto complete for you. I don't know if anyone else has this problem, but it's like just very intrusive. It's not
100%.
like, yeah. It's just like, oh, stop jumping. I just want to write this, you know? And like, I just hate writing JSON anyway, because like, you know, who does like writing it by hand? But yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's really awesome. So I guess that kind of works along the same route as probably knowing the sync between like operations and what's in the document tab and been selected, and just knowing like, okay, so we see that this property requires these variables, and so we're just going to go ahead and add those to the variables for you as well. Um,
Yeah.
since I popped this open, I know I'm noticing like headers as well, which of course it's very important to be able to um, add custom headers. Did you all, want to talk about like the network side of this and how that works, or like authentication? Like, I mean, I guess it's kind of limited to your graph, so as long as you can support an API key, you can support authentication. Is that, am I, eh? 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 All right, I'll take it. Yeah.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
you can,
no,
if you
yes,
got
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're correct.
Awesome.
And like to clarify, like it's on our minds to think about ways to improve the authentication story.
Yeah.
That's one of our priorities for like upcoming features because that will be one of the biggest challenges. Is as folks are jumping in here, like how do you authenticate with your graph? So I mean, if you've got access to your API key, that's cool, but we want to tell a story where you can do that in other ways too, if it's not as simple for just going to grab your API key somewhere.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, auth is a very hard problem, right? It's implemented so many different ways, so many different types. It's very, very hard to do. Yeah,
It's
that's
one of
awesome.
the limitations that we have with being a web app instead of a Electron app, and so we can't handle authentication in the same way that Postman or Insomnia can, because we're sending a request straight from like ApolloGraphQL.com to your endpoint. So there are some limitations that we're trying to figure out how to work around, but we are thinking about it, and we definitely want to make things easier for everyone and ourselves as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, the difference between like this is running in web and like most other query building tools and things like that are either working within the same domain, generally, like if you have graphical configured for your server, or something like that. But yeah, generally like when it's cross domain, it's like API key. But yeah, that could be interesting to hit those walls because you're coming from a different domain. I didn't even think about that. Is there anything else that y'all want to highlight? Kind of show off a little bit.
Speaking of coming from a different domain, something that hasn't come up yet is
Ooh.
the cores issue. That was one we thought a lot about too. Is there's going to be a lot of folks that are wanting to use Explorer with their graph, but because they're coming from the Apollo GraphQL domain, they're going to run into a cores issue whenever they're trying to run it on their server or authenticate to their graph. So that was one of the things we spent some time talking about. It ultimately ended up with we created a notification, an in-app notification experience where I mean, there's a number of things that can respond with this particular 400 error or cause that. But we assume that most of the time it's going to be cores for most people. So the notification banner helps walk you through that process of like, how do I debug
Yeah.
this or diagnose it? I don't know if Jeffrey, if you wanted to speak to that at all.
Yeah, so one of the unfortunate things is that there's no way of actually differentiating between a network error and a course error because of security reasons. So there's no
Yep.
difference from our point of view whether the server is not running or if it's a course issue. So that was, yeah, like Joel came up with the design for just a message that's sort of like, hey, we can't reach your server. It might be course, or it could be like they give like kind of a list of things that could be the issue. And we show that we actually now, because we're trying to make the first run experience really good, obviously. So we check if we can contact your server before you run a query, so you don't get to that point where you're like really excited. I built this query, I'm going to run it, and then it can't connect. It'll tell you that right away. Like if you enter the endpoint URL, it's going to be like, hey, we can't do that. So you can fix that before you get too deep into it.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense. Security concern, right? Like you can't just be
Yeah.
announcing what the issue is. Yeah, and so it's just like kind of providing that list of most probable steps, right? I guess is like or causes. I guess would be a better word. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
cool. And it's again back to the small things. Like that's a nice touch. Like you try and connect your graph and you're like, what the heck is going on? Network errors are probably not very helpful to the average person, but it's like, hey, don't worry. Try these things first. Then go for the what is that? The buoy, the little life saver thing in the bottom
Yeah.
corner. Yeah. Yeah. Then click that button
Then talk.
if all else fails. Cool. Awesome. What else? What else? What was it like? Kind of. Is all of Apollo Studio like a React app? Is that what this is built on? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. So is this like basically just like its own encapsulated component? Like you just dropped it in here. You're like this tab equals Explorer. Is it
Yeah,
pretty
that's
much
pretty much it.
self-contained?
We have a async wrapper, so we don't load
Okay.
it for the main app unless you're on the page. and then we're soon
Right.
going to be adding some prefetch stuff to it. Monaco is decent size. It's like 560
Yeah.
unminified. I want to say unminified. Anyway, it's big, but we have
Yeah,
it.
relatively large. Yeah, that's cool. And so is Monaco like being pulled in like an NPM dependency, or are you doing something from like unpackage, or you're just doing like standard lazy loading like React lazy? Is that the way everyone's doing it now?
We are doing React Lazy. We are using Monaco Webpack plugin. I forgot the full name of it. Monaco Webpack plugin. I thought there were 4 words. Anyway, we're creating a slightly custom build because we don't need any of the other languages that Monaco comes by default. So we don't need HTML, CSS, and I think we might want to customize the JSON language at some point. But I think we're using the default one currently.
Got it.
Yeah, right now we're just using the default one. I think when we go to add more features to that panel, we'll have to switch out, or at least see if we can build things on top.
Mm-hmm. One of the fun stories, possibly fun stories about bundling Monaco that way is by default, our Webpack build was, as soon as we pulled in Monaco, was creating like an additional 70 bundles because Webpack was trying to do its own chunking. So like after we added it, was like 70 bundles included, and then we had to figure out how do we organize that so that we don't have quite so many. That was a fun little problem to solve.
I don't envy anyone who is configuring Webpack chunks. That's just, that's like you're deep in the nitty gritty when you're at that point. Yeah, yeah, very cool. So what else? What else we got cooking in here? I have a question actually, if you don't mind. So Meatball menu kind of like opens up this new door. Like you've discovered that you can inject UI into Monaco and operate with it and do things like. Have y'all started thinking of like wild ideas? Not saying this is roadmap, but like, have you thought of any other interesting uses for that? I'm just like curious if like you're like, oh, now that we could do this, we could do X, Y, and Z as well.
Jason, can you share the thing you're working on?
I don't know what we're allowed to share.
The answer is yes. We absolutely
keep your eyes peeled. Oh, Danielle messaged me. She said, "Share it" in all caps.
Yeah, share it.
I guess okay. The first, well, yeah. Once Jeffrey opened that door, we had some mocks from I don't know how long ago, from Joel about showing kind of like result hints for your schema. So like when you start typing a query, if you've used the VS Code extension, it shows you like timing data beside it.
Yeah.
But
those
yeah,
mocks
we
are
have
actually from Adam Torres, by the way. Those are predated.
Oh, so those are
yeah.
Okay. Those are from quite a while ago, from Explorer's original designs.
I love that we like
yeah,
keep saying like original quite a while ago, but really we're talking like 4 months, folks. Like just so that everyone
feels
is
like a
clear,
long
like
time.
how.
Feels
Yeah,
like
yeah. I bet.
yeah, just to show you like example data kind of from your schema.
Yeah.
So like if you turn on your like live toggle or whatever, you can see what's going to come back as you're building. So you have that kind of like that tight feedback loop instead of needing to have a couple extra steps in there to like refine what you want.
Yeah, so I'm switching over to the display. Oops, sorry. So so I'm switching over. Oops, I meant to hit this operations. So like Studio gives you a lot of metrics about your queries and mutations and everything that's going on in there. And so a bit about what Jason's talking about is like getting information about like estimated times for how long it will take for the query to resolve and like example data sets from other queries that have been returned. Is that correct? Am I on the right track there?
That was for the VS Code extension. This would just be live for what you're currently connected to.
Yes, yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah.
So the idea there is like if you're constructing your operation, wouldn't it be great if we could give you a preview of what's going to come back to you before you even run it so that maybe, if you're looking for one field and you're like, nope, that's actually not the field I really need. I want this field. So we can do some things to give you a preview of that before you construct it and run it.
That's so wild.
And
yeah.
Also, can I just say too, like, the cool thing about this, from my perspective, is, and this is sort of a chance too to like plug the team a little bit. I just want to say that it's one of the things I've enjoyed on this project has been working with this team so much, because this is one of the most like talented and intelligent and fast teams I've ever worked with. And it's been cool to be able to see how like we can come up with ideas here and there and just like get them out there, start trying them. Let's see how it feels and get stuff moving pretty quickly. Enough to be able to iterate really fast. And so like when we were talking about the history panel, for example, like there's a lot that's still planned, but like being able to add in the meatball menu and start to treat operations within the operation panel as individuals unlocks sort of the next phase of how we can begin to treat your experience as working within individual operations while you have a whole bunch. And one of the reasons that's important is because we learned from talking to teams and watching people that a lot of folks that currently use Graphical, because Graphical doesn't have tabs either, like they'll just drop entire sets of all kind of operations in there. So yeah, so like you want to be able to reason about your different operations individually, and eventually we're going to add even more features like being able to save individually from your operation, and like you can already now with the meatball menu run it individually, but that gives you the experience of like working with each individual one without having to think about the whole palette.
Yeah, and just to touch on that real quick, I love that because like even though in like Insomnia, for anyone who's used it, you can like save queries like individual. You can specify it's GraphQL, but I still just have one for like the endpoint, and I will just put bunches because I'm so used to that from Graphical that now it's just habit. Like I just throw all of my queries into like one operations panel. So being able to get that division between them and work with them individually is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Like so we're past the hour mark. I think like if there's one or two more things you'd like to show off, I think that'd be cool. And then I think after that we could probably wrap up with just like what you would maybe not roadmap, but like certain things that you'd like to see from this, or anything you want anyone to know who's like going to be using this, or anything like that. But yeah, before we get to that, was there any other features that I might have missed that we want to go over? Like we didn't really get to talk about the response panel very much yet, or anything like that.
I couldn't think of anything. I don't know if anyone else has stuff they'd like to add.
If we could talk about the variables builder.
Oh, yeah.
Since you don't like writing JSON.
Yeah, I don't like it. Yeah, can we talk a little bit more about that variables builder?
Yeah, so I guess one of the more unique parts is so like you can, when it auto completes, it'll add the variable for you. It'll add that to the definitions at the top. It'll add it to the JSON as a null value that you can fill out. You'll get lint warnings that it is a null value, so you do know when it's added that you need to fill that out. But if you have an input object, like on a mutation or something where you're passing a complex object to it, and you go into the doc builder, you can actually build up that entire shape. So if you click on the input argument, it'll dive into that, and then you'll have all the keys that are on that input object, and you click on that and it'll add it to the JSON variable as well. So all you have to do is add strings, numbers, and enums in the JSON if you want.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's try this out. So I'm clicking here on products. Let me name this query real quick. Query, oops, put a space. New query. And then, so I've got products. So I click on this first argument for first. And so it added the variable to the query definition. It then put that variable like in the actual query itself. We can see we have products first down here, and then I can be like 10, and boom. So that's already done for me. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's really
I don't know if you have
interesting.
any. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't know if you have. Oh, go ahead, Jason.
2 times.
Does a Cephi have any complicated input objects, like filters or anything like that?
That's a good point. Let me
I don't
check.
know much about
I
the
don't think
Asefi graph.
so. I don't know if it does. We have a top products. Oh, deprecated use products instead. Ooh, that's nice. I like that. That little deprecation badge in there. That's really nice. Okay, so let's go back to products. Yeah, no, we just have type, but that looks to be an enum. Um, yeah, we could in Google, but I don't. I can do it for or Google GitHub. I could do it for an example, but I won't be able to run the query because I don't have an API key in here. But let's just take a look at what that looks like. So we'll do query something in here. Let's just search actually for repository.
You can also search straight for the input field if you wanted to.
Oh, input. Whoa. Wow, that works.
To search for
Action.
by name.
I'm gonna add this and see what we got. Oh wow. Oh, that pulled in the. Oh, I forgot that this will pull in the thing for you off union types as well, which is really cool. Does that make sense? Or like, yeah. So like, if you have like user and client and like all these other things, but they all have like a name, like it will actually resolve which type that should come off as well when you select it. But no, I'm having like a trouble finding a um, like good queryable uh, um, what you call it input. So I searched for input, but most of these look like from root query.
Yeah.
I need root mutation. Here we go. Let's look at something like this.
There, you don't tend to be looking for a specific shape of input in a
Yeah,
graph.
yeah,
It's not a very
exactly.
common use case.
But I have my input here, and so yeah, it adds the add comments input to the variables as well. That's cool. Yeah, you wouldn't normally like search from this way. This is purely to show it. And then if we move it over, we get like that nice clean syntax. This is really cool. But look at this query that this just built for me. So I do want to focus on this for a second because like all I did was search for an action and then click add that action because I was nested. And it built like this awesome big mutation for me. Like it's got my union types on union types. It's got the input variable declaration. Like I think we underestimate the amount of minutes that this will save. And when you aggregate those minutes over days and weeks and months, like this is like a huge time saver for people who work with GraphQL regularly. Huge. Not to mention it makes it easier for product managers, design teams, like QA, anyone else to explore and discover the graph as well. So, oh.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an interesting moment the other day when I was working on a feature for another part of Studio, and I was trying to figure out what all information we had on SDLs, for example.
Yeah.
And I was asking Danielle, and she was like, "Oh, you can just go in Explorer, and we have some fields for the SDL document." And I was like, "Oh, this is amazing!" And I just ran the query, and I saw the fields that are available on it, and was able to get some sample data to throw in my design mocks.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's what I mean. It's that ease of use and like the the experience from getting to like I need to find something to I now have like actionable data to work with is really fast. Faster than anything I've used to build queries before, you know. So yeah, this is really awesome stuff. Anything else y'all wanna highlight before we get into like, actually I don't even know if there is anything else to get into. It depends on how much you can share. Somebody DM Danielle real quick and be like, how much can we say about what's coming up?
What I really want to talk about is what next, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see if we get the okay on that. Well, while we're waiting, any other features?
I'll say one thing real quick,
Yeah.
Kurt, that you had mentioned about the response panel, and it's pretty straightforward right now, but we've got some exciting things planned for that as well. I mean, just on a simple level, just to say that like we would love to give you more options on ways that you can view and navigate your response, and so that's something that we'll be working on as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, I have two new queries. That's not going to work. Yeah, I'm very interested about that because I feel like that's on often overlooked part. It's like, yes, I do want to see through my response, but like at times, like that can also be overwhelming, right? Like, I could think of like sometimes being in graphical, especially when I was at like Major League Soccer, and like you're looking for matches or whatever or stats about a player, and it's just this like, whoop, like array, of like 300 entries, and it's not very pleasing to dig through. Where's the dark mode option for settings? Having trouble finding it. If you're in, yeah. Oh, thank you, CNA Smith. Yeah, exactly. It's in the bottom. This little sun. Let me flip over, and I'm gonna zoom in on it. It's this little sun icon down here in the bottom right, and all you got to do is click it. Boop, back and forth. Boop, boop. Light, dark, light, dark. It's very
We're
cool.
also worth noting we're still considering whether that's the best place for it. Not the first time I've heard
Oh,
feedback that it's not terribly discoverable there from a couple people. So we
there
might
you
be
go.
we're looking at ways to make that a little more discoverable. So thanks for pointing that out.
There you go. Nothing like hearing it from the chat, right? This is why I love these streams. Very informative. I love to get people's feedback in the real time. Yeah. Okay.
Also,
So, oh, go ahead.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just to
No, please
say
do.
on the note of feedback, if you have any feedback, we are super interested to hear what is your experience like? What are the things that are working really well for you in Explorer, like that you get some value out of, that what helps you from it? What are the things that are tricky or not super awesome that you'd like to see improved? Um, and what are some of the ways that your team might benefit from like some of these experiences or things that you might have? And if you want to share your feedback, just go down to the bottom right hand corner where there's that little help lifesaver thing
Yeah.
icon, and there's a menu there where you can share feedback. It'll get right to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so I'm just showing it on the screen right here. Share feedback, get support, boom, bitty boom. So yeah, that share feedback, the double, double. What are those things called? Why can't I remember the name? You throw it out.
A life preserver.
Life preserver. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jeez. I kept wanting to say lifesaver, and I'm like, no, that's a candy. Good times. Awesome.
We
So yeah,
also
did we want to maybe? Oh, yeah, go.
we did get some confirmation. I don't know if maybe Chung wants to talk about what he's been working on, or
Sure. So one of the feedbacks that we've been getting is that people want to use because it's so easy to navigate with search. People want to be able to look at documentation for types as well. And we're working on actually a more fleshed out, focused page just for types. So that
Okay.
might be a thing that's coming in the near future. I'm working on that this sprint,
Very
but I'm not
cool.
giving promises for when it's going to get approved.
Yeah. No promises, but things that you could see. That's where we're at, folks.
Another thing I'd love to say too is on the note of what would you like to see. I mean, we're thinking a lot too about how Explorer can be useful in the rest of your experience in Studio. And so, like, one of the first places we started was with adding a button in the traces view where you can open a particular operation while you're looking at it in traces, and it'll take you into Explorer. So
That's
we're also looking at other pathways that, like, where does it make sense in Studio that you might be looking through operations or fields or usage, and then want to go test that out in Explorer. If you think of examples like that, let us know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that makes a ton of sense, right? Because now it's integrated. Now, instead of it just being this kind of isolated thing, we could say, oh, well, we're in here, we're looking at individual requests, and I kind of want to see this operation and dig into it and explore. Yeah, oof, yeah, the list goes on. Anything else? It might be it, folks. So, we're gonna, yeah, we'll say that that is it. We'll hold up there. I'll give 1 minute for any questions from the chat. If you have any burning desires and want to know any last information about Explorer, now is your time, folks, while you got the team right here. And while we're doing that, I guess we can just wrap up with, do you have any last thoughts? Like, I mean, we've already shared that we would love the feedback or appreciate anything. Is there anything else that y'all want to add? Any shout outs you want to do or anything like that? The floor is yours.
I'll give a quick shout out to our team's fearless leader, Danielle. She could just as easily be in here talking about building this with us. I mean, she's jumped in and participated in building it as well. And so much of the design and the idea of what we were making comes from her experience and intuition and research with folks too. So big shout out to Danielle.
Nice. Very cool. Thank you, Danielle.
I wanted to double up on the feedback part. It's
Yeah.
not one of those things where we say it so that we get engagement and then we don't look at it. As soon as a feedback comes in, it comes into our Slack channel, we jump to it, and then we just wolf it down with our eyes. So keep those coming.
Ah. Yes, honestly, like seriously, feedback. Folks, when you try this out, it matters. Like your experience matters so much. And we want your experience to be the best that it can be. And sometimes it's hard for us to know what that is without you kind of nudging us along. So we definitely want you to click that little button, share feedback, and yeah, or you can always DM me on Twitter. I'm available at Kurt Kemple. It's actually showing up here on the title right there on the stream. More than happy to take your feedback and pass it along to the team as well. So don't be afraid to reach out to me either, or just tweet at me and be like, Kurt, what's going on? Fix this. Or Kurt, I love this. Or Kurt, it'd be cool if we could. All those are welcome. So yeah, really appreciate it. I want to say thank you again to our panelists. Thank you so much for coming on and joining me. This was really fun. We had a couple audio hiccups, but I feel like we did pretty good. What do y'all think?
Feel pretty good. Thank you so much for having us and guiding us along with our, I think for most of us, it's our first live stream. Definitely the
Ooh,
first for me.
yeah, cool.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
Thanks for having
That's
us on.
nice, Kurt.
It was fun.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I did greats in the chat as well. Thank you so much. Yeah, everyone did great. We all did great. And yeah, this was cool. We're going to do, and y'all are welcome to come back. So, like, maybe in a little while, we circle back and see what's new in Explorer. And I would love to do that. Yeah, but yeah, all right. So, yeah, thank you so much. I guess we'll call it here. Everyone feels good. I feel like this is a high note. So we're gonna peace out now, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us one last time. And yeah, we will see you all later. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for your time.